statement, which was basically, in a perfect world, these are all the things that we'd overarching want for kids. Then we had our executive summary. We did the way that we ordered this last year was stuff that is important for everybody / younger kids, and then as you go down, it's more and more specific, or more and more specific to older kids. And then we had our appendix with more data. So we had everyone's biographies. Then we explained our statutory authority. Here's the vision and value statement. Executive summary. So for these, this was our first category. We had all the recommendations for under that category. And then we talked about, here's what the history is in the background, was a lot of it. Or basically things you need to know in order to understand these recommendations. So then we had data privacy. And all of these had a conclusion as well, which is, we think, overall what this should happen.
I think this is a variation here. So the first couple of sections, there were multiple recommendations at a common background and common conclusion. I know in this section, you'll see there's basically one recommendation, one background, one conclusion, and then another recommendation, another background, another conclusion. It just depends on, do you have a group of recommendations around the same issue, but that you want to call out separate recommendations to be very clear, or are they related to the same category, but they're pretty much standalone recommendations? So we can do it either way in the report. There's flexibility there.
Also, another way that we use background is to explain why a recommendation is needed. Yes, we're making this recommendation, but why is it important? Or it may be who brought it to our attention. We may need to for example, the recommendations that Randy brought to us earlier, we may need to explain what that organization does, or explain issues like breaks as we make the recommendation. And this one has update in the background because the background hadn't changed from the last report, except that one of our recommendations was passed as permissive and needs an update. So that one, we just updated it from the previous year's report. And also this had two perspectives in it because we couldn't come to the same conclusion about recommendations within our work group. So we had two different perspectives there. So the conclusion in this one was the baseline of what we could agree on. And we had two different perspectives on how a request for a full evaluation should be documented. Sometimes in the recommendation, we copied and pasted the current code and then said what we would add to it. And the way that we did that was by underlying what we would add the way that actual bills and codes is amended.
So Amy, this is Agatha. So for our next meeting, which I don't think we have a date for yet, what are you looking to have the subcommittees have? You know, a problem statement of what the issue is, and then a what that subcommittee would recommend in trying to remedy the issue?
I would recommend you have at least draft background statements of why it's a problem, because you're going, why is whatever you're addressing a problem? At least, if not, draft recommendations that you can bring to us for, does this make sense to somebody that doesn't understand the issue? Or is our recommendation a TA recommendation or a legislative recommendation, so we know where to put it in the report? I think that's kind of where we need to start for next meeting. And then we can then y'all can take them back and figure out how to shape them after we have those conversations.
Yeah, and I would just add when coming to for all the new members, I mean, I know that sometimes the thought of having to have a recommendation and present seems daunting, but it's not that anything has to come, you know, in its finished form. Basically, we're all here as a committee to shore things up and put them into a format. So all that is really needed is just a statement of what the issue is in rudimentary form, even because we can shore it up, and just ideas from the subcommittee of what the solutions, what possible solutions that there are. It's certainly like right now, what's in front of us is our final product after it's gone through a formatting committee and everything. So that's not how things need to come. They just need to, you know, be formalized to a point that it's just written down. We can edit it as a group, put in some just different pointers, different perspectives, and then, you know, shore it up slowly but surely as the dates get closer.
Yeah, and even can be in a perfect world, I would love for this to happen, but I don't know how we could make it happen. Could even be where you start. I mean, it doesn't have to be, I have a recommendation and I know exactly how to do it either. So,
This, Aaron, I would add, some working group may have a very clear idea of what they want to do, and they become fully formed, or they know what they want to do, but may not necessarily know what the background, how to frame the background, or exactly even how to frame the recommendation, but they're very clear of, we want to do something like this. The working group may also say, we know this is important, but we don't know what the recommendation might be. That's where we can make sure there's a time in the agenda to discuss, that idea as a whole committee if the working group is still a little stumped about exactly what may or may not need to be done there. I'll also add, particularly for the new members, remember, recommendations don't have to be, the legislature needs to adopt a new law. Sometimes that is what we need to recommend, but other times it may be a change in administrative rule, and which can be done, kind of with a rulemaking proceeding. It may just be that we want to see how things are done in a different way, and maybe take an existing resource and update it with some new guidance, or just call on something to be refreshed based on kind of a review and an update as needed. So think broadly about what the recommendation is, how it can be best achieved, and know that sometimes it just doesn't have to be the legislature has to do X, Y, or Z. But also keep in mind at the same time, some of the rules we have around, a lot of the rules we have around special education are things that are set in federal law, and we don't get a say in that as a state committee.
It can also be, hey, this great thing is out there, but nobody knows about it. So we recommend that you educate people about it.
Amy, this is Agatha. I was thinking that, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea for us to just kind of go around to all the different subcommittees and just, have them talk a little bit about what their subcommittee is and what their just a statement of problem, like what they're seeing as the main issue for the subcommittee.
Okay.
just so that we all as a committee have just a brief overview of where everyone's head's at.
Oh, hold on. I have a list of the subcommittees right here.
That might just get our discussion rolling on the different issues.
So, digital access. What is your main purpose for digital access this year?
The digital literacy one. So when we met last, we looked at the 3 current recommendations and agreed that all 3 of them were things we still wanted to pursue. We did want to update and reward, particularly recommendation 16 around assistive technology training and awareness for art committees. But we also said, hey, all three of the recommendations are about TEA action or recommendations that TEA takes certain actions. And so we got the updates from Kristen McGuire this morning. And so we can use that to decide how we, want to update or keep as needed the 3 recommendations. So we'll have to meet again about that. But I think there wasn't really a desire to add anything to those 3. As I said, maybe do some updating, particularly based on what we heard from Kristen this morning.
Well, thank you for that update. That helps me get my head around what y'all might need to do for background and recommendations. Janie, do you want to talk about the staffing work group?
I scheduled a meeting, but we weren't able to meet, but I know that some of the issues that we have with the staffing is that some of the teachers don't want to work in the with special education students because the teacher-student ratio is very high. So you have one teacher and a lot of students with just 1 or 2 paraprofessionals, and that's not enough. Another of the issues is incentives. Right now, special education teachers do not qualify for the teacher TI incentive allotment. So they don't qualify, and the TIA can give up to $30,000 for teacher students with general education students. So I think that there should be incentives and allotments for teachers working with 100% of students that are in the SPED classification.
And it sounds like you'll have a lot on your plate. April, the behavior subcommittee
Yes.
directive.
So we had, I think we met twice, like I said, not all of us at the same time, but our conversations were around and were kind of combined by whenever, I think it was, I don't remember if it was Ed O'Neill or Keith Swing that talked to us last time about the increase in complaints they've had around restraints and things like that. That paired with what we had been saying was just the amount of behavioral concerns that we hear from teachers. And so after a lot of talking about things, one thing we were going to request is as far as establishing need is the increase in the complaints around this area. And I think I think TEA said they had that, how much it had increased on that. And then our initial conversations are around some sort of required de-escalation training for all staff. Currently, right now, there's nothing really in place to require gen ed staff. There is a core team that's required to be trained on each campus to be trained in like restraints, but we really were just hoping to keep things from getting to the point of the aggression. And so that's where our initial discussions are on just some sort of initial training for all staff that works with children on trying to de-escalate some of these issues.
Hey, April, this is Agatha. I just have a question. I'm a parent, so I'm not exactly sure on all the training that staff has to go through. I know that or my understanding, I should say, is that there is mandatory training that all teachers have, and then there's subsequent training that they have in particular areas that I think is chosen by administration. So is the recommendation to require that de-escalation training for all teachers across the board to be part of the mandatory training and not
So-
just like a
Yeah, it's probably one that doesn't necessarily exist right now.
Mhm.
So whenever there is a required trainings document that Stephanie maybe ought to get to it quick. If not, I can bring it back or find it. But all the school districts go off. There's a list that gets put out, I think by TASB, that shows all the required trainings. The only place right now that we see the required de-escalation is a part of like the CPI restraint training. There's a section of it. So sometimes districts will ask us just to do the portion of that, not the full restraint training. They just want more of the de-escalation. So really just something that I don't think there is an exact requirement just for de-escalation training of any sort at this point.
Okay.
April, I'm a school teacher, and the only time I've actually been trained in behavior is when a student hit me, and that was after the fact.
Yeah.
The school districts are not giving behavioral training for students.
Yeah, there is a requirement that if you do restrain a child, you have to be trained within 30 days of that restraint. However, in around our region, for the most part, we do have a regular training of what we usually see as a core team on each campus. It's not huge, but there'll be like a lot of times our self-contained teachers and then certain administrators or certain staff will get trained for a campus. We do a lot of restraint trainings in our region, but you're right, it's definitely not everyone is restrained. And you don't want everyone trained in restraint. I guess I'd just probably start by saying that because we really don't want everyone putting their hands on kids. It's a last resort. But it's really hard to de-escalate things once you've gotten to that point. So it would be I think a lot of these things could be helped if we would teach gen ed teachers and more teachers how to keep children from getting to that escalated part.
Okay, so just as a clarification, that's going to be a recommendation.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
so far that's what we're talking about. We haven't made our final recommendations, but that's one of the
Okay,
things.
good. That works.
And this is just kind of piggybacking on what Janie was asking. I mean, so I guess April, my question is once when teachers are going through their university studies, is there anything in that? Because I know that they do like child development and things like that. Is there any de-escalation training, or is there any education around special education that is in a general teacher's university degree program, or is that once they get a position with the district?
Mhm.
Is anyone able to speak to that?
So I will just say first, and then anybody else feel please jump in. And I can't speak to all universities, but for the ones that we've worked with, there'll usually be some version of like a special POPs course that kind of covers all special areas, including like gifted and talented, but all. And then we do see sometimes a classroom management type thing in some of our courses. What we have found though is, I'm sure you'll have seen, is the majority of the teachers we're working with these days did not get a teaching degree. They have a degree in, they could have a degree in psychology, they could have a degree in marketing, and they're going through an alt cert program right now. And like for our alt program at Region 10, they do some behavior, they do some classroom management and things around that. But as far as getting specific in like intense de-escalation and things, we offer some trainings like that at Region 10, but I know that it's not broadly trained or known, especially outside of special education. And we know that more than 70% of our kids spend most of their time in gen ed classes. And so it's really something that, we would like to see across the board as far as just a more awareness of how to respond to students' behaviors.
Yeah, maybe I'm
I was also going to kind of comment just to second on everything that kind of April said. I can look into it. I'm not in the Department of Special Education, but if you want, I can look into the standards. Everything April said, there are classes in classroom management and the such, but I'm not sure if that is a requirement, at the undergraduate level. Because they're trained EC3. Yeah. So I can look into it. I'm just
thank you. I mean, I'm just kind of wondering because we are making a legislative
training on that.
Sorry, Janie, go ahead.
Oh, I went through an alternate certification program, and I don't recall ever receiving any training or on behavior or how to deal with students that have behavioral issues.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, this is Agatha again. I'm just kind of, since we are making a legislative recommendation, I mean, maybe we can include in our recommendation that, something maybe a certain amount of training happening at, any level or all levels, or just suggesting that, it be incorporated, since we have more and more students that are falling under IEPs and 504s and may have issues that just there's, the makeup of the classroom is changing. And so maybe, university classes or, requirements just include a bit more information on what the modern classroom looks like, and maybe not, the classroom of old is not the classroom of present. And maybe our recommendation could include something that allows the legislature to just think about including that at multiple levels.
I think that would be great. I think it's hard sometimes. I know we don't have to worry too much about the rollout, but just knowing that I'm part of a lot of things that get rolled out. TEA has done some things in the past where they might make a recommendation and then they'll give like some examples of, so they may not say it's just this exact training, but like here would be 10 different options of things that could count to this. And so, because obviously we know depending on what role you're in, that might need to look a little different. So I think there's a couple ways that we could do it so that it would at least be something that could be rolled out across the state.
This is Joanne. I'm also a parent on the committee. I would also add that that the training not be specific to teachers and paras, but even to substitutes, since our districts are hiring a lot of substitutes right now with the shortage of teachers and even additional staff. I caught the tail end of a news clip the other night, and I'm not really sure if this gentleman was an administrator or a teacher or even a janitor, but he was struck by a special ed student. He fell, hit his head, and he actually passed away. So I think behavior is certainly big, and there needs to be some changes, and it doesn't need to be restricted to teaching staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so important because, like you said, we've seen all sorts of people just being filled into classrooms because of just the shortage, and similar along the lines of just anybody that interacts with children in some capacity, and then of course flexibility around within so many days of, or if you're already in, like I'm sure there's pieces that we could clean up around that, but absolutely, there's so many kids on the staff, and when we've seen mental health things like that before, it's usually read out with like all staff. And so that's including bus drivers and all of those people that might enter, janitors, anyone that might be around children.
Okay, so educational rep, um, we were talking about how students that are over the age of 18 are sometimes pressured into getting guardianship by the school because they need more support in representing themselves. But the school does not want to take into consideration the federal regulation that a student is allowed to invite whoever they want to support them. But our work group has decided that this is more of an advocacy issue than a policy issue because the policy already exists. People just aren't following it. So, we have decided that maybe it needs to be a piece of background or in our value statement more than we have actual recommendations at this point. So we are considering whether to continue as a work group or not. Formatting is not meeting as of right now because we don't have a lot to format yet.
Hey, Amy, it's Agatha. Just going back to that educational representative, I know, because I'm on that committee, I know that we did discuss what you were saying about it being more of a procedure issue that's not being followed and not necessarily a policy issue. But I would, if you don't mind, like to open it up to the committee, and just since we kind of have this bit of an opening, are there any other suggestions under this educational representative group that maybe we could, change our focus if anyone has any recommendations for us that they think might fall under that?
Agatha, can you repeat the first part of your question?
Well, just piggybacking off of what I guess what I'm asking is, with what Amy was saying about the pressure of getting guardianship at the ARD committees, our group discussed that was a policy had already existed, so that our recommendation, I guess our group kind of like our committee would kind of go away. And I guess imposing to the committee saying, is there anything else that the committee sees would be important, since this is more of a policy issue that's not being followed? Is there anything else that the committee sees that could take its place?
I have an idea of what we could expand it to.
Okay.
Perhaps we could make policy recommendations about strengthening policy that allows for self-determination and choice making to be a part of the IEP, so that when they become young adults, they don't need as much support, or they have access to more supports that they need without running into this issue.
Do you mind expanding on that? I'm not,
I guess what I'm saying is that the crux of the issue is that we want to make sure students have the tools that they need to participate in their art committee at any age to the full extent of their potential, right? That's what we're really saying. So perhaps if we expanded that work group to what recommendations do we have that are policy related that aren't in law already, as to how do we prepare students for that?
May I interject?
Yeah, sure.
Right now with transition, the way many districts do it, our district as well, we include students, so they are included, and they have opportunities to self-advocate. And additionally, they do participate in their art committee meetings, IEP meetings, if you will. At most, for most districts, I think that's already something that's done. So it could be a component of transition, but it is really already there. As I see it, in various districts that I've worked in and the current district that I work in. Thanks.
yeah, I tend, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. It's just, I guess maybe our committee would have to look and see if there is something that we could affect through policy, because as we kind of talked through, a lot of it exists in policy, but sometimes in certain schools,
Not in practice.
yes, it's
Not
just
in
not the
practice.
procedure. Yeah, is not.
Right.
So, and maybe we just strike that one.
And that could lead to maybe a recommendation for coursework or electives or required components of the high school curriculum to include a class in self-advocacy or include a class in leadership or characteristics of leadership or something that really trains a student in how to properly advocate for themselves. Maybe that's something. I know some school districts teach leadership. This is one of their electives, but it's not a required component. So there is value in teaching a student how to advocate for themselves in an appropriate manner. And it could be part of a social studies curriculum, perhaps. I don't know. I'm just thinking outside the box.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what we're meant to do here, is just kind of get our ideas out and have just open discussion on these things.
Yeah, hi, this is Kevin with TWC. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, just one thing to add to that thought is that one of the things that our agency has been involved with over the last several years, of course, is making available pre-employment transition services defined by WIOA, to students with disabilities across the state. And a part of those services includes self-advocacy. So we have, including the exact topic that, is at hand. And we have a number of providers, a great number of providers that, have contracted with us that work in partnership with schools and in the community to provide these services, including this particular topic on self advocacy and self-determination, et cetera, and doing it in an appropriate way. And so, that certainly is one resource that can be leveraged, as we look at this issue, for sure.
Well, this was a good discussion. I don't really know where it ends up at this point, but it's a good discussion. So dyslexia, Janie?
Okay, some of the issues that I've encountered, because I'm a dyslexia teacher, is that the state was great in offering free training for teachers to learn how to use the MTA program. Unfortunately, some of the school districts are only using MTA for all the students, and the information in it is not age appropriate. I know that my first and second grade students are having difficulty because of the advanced material in it. So it's not really age appropriate. The other thing is that some of the students are not receiving instruction based on their home language survey. So they're classified as emergent bilingual, or specifically as Spanish, and they're receiving English instruction. Well, yes, they're going to be struggling because their home language is not Spanish, and they're receiving, and this is a bilingual issue, bilingual education issue. The other thing is that I know that because of the lack of available programs, maybe our committee or TA can make recommendations of age-appropriate programs. I know that Lexia is being used at the secondary level, but Lexia is not direct instruction, which is also a requirement for proper dyslexia instruction.
Hey, Janie, this is Agatha. I have just a question, just a clarifying question about the age appropriate. Like, can you give an example of what you mean?
Age appropriate instruction is, if I guess I go to shoot about samples based on the MTA, which AMP is using. One is the history of language. I know that at the beginning, they're talking about the Greek and the like Egyptology, hieroglyphics. And I myself, I mean, I love history, but I try sharing with some of my friends that are my age, and it's way beyond. Some of the other material is, um, let's just say that it's, if you're a first grade student and you're struggling with learning your basic alphabet, the material that Amplio is using, it's really advanced. It's like me, I don't cook, and somebody telling me that I need to cook as well as Emeril Lagasse or you know, one of your other famous chefs. I wouldn't be able to do it. And this is the same thing. Like there's no way that MTA is age appropriate for first graders and 12th graders at the same level. The coding in itself, I know that Kid One has students code, but if they're very learning your vowels and your consonants, it's very hard for them to learn the coding for double letters or it's just not age appropriate, believe me. You know, I work with students and I'm having to um teach it differently, not the fidelity that needs to be in order for them to be developing or being able to get the whole grasp of the dyslexia program.
I understand what you're saying. It's just not, it's not getting down to breaking it down to a level where it's it's appropriate for them. They're having a harder time with the program. So it's giving them an added
Frustrated.
problem instead of
Frustrated.
helping them with the initial problem of
The
reading.
dyslexia should be teacher directed and it shouldn't be based on programs. Lexia is great. I've used it before when I was a reading interventionist. And it can be used for for dyslexic students, but that is more of a app that they use, and it's AI based on how well they do it, advances them, and it gives you many lessons if they're struggling. But that's not direct instruction, which is one of the requirements for any dyslexia program. I know that another, because I was in a teacher cohort, Region 4 gave us the training for Esperanza, which is bilingual based, and MTA, which is English based. The classes, there was no student ratio. I don't have that problem, but when you have 14 to 16 students and you have first graders with middle school students with one teacher, that teacher, I feel bad for her because she was so frustrated. So they're not really able to implement the program with fidelity, one because of class size and levels, different grade levels.
Okay. Funding. Adrian, let's talk about funding. Is Adrian here?
Amy, I don't think he showed up for the meeting today.
Yeah, Adrian is not here today.
So, we definitely need to talk about funding. We've been talking about it all day. Because special ed is seriously funded, especially with the STARS issues. So, yeah, it's a big topic that involves everything else. So, if anybody has any smaller pieces that they want to bring up work group, let me know.
Amy, I participated in one of the meetings with Adrian, and I know that I do recall the two issues that are brought up that I want to make sure that we included more explicitly in our upcoming recommendations than we did in the last one was, and Stephen Alaman from Disability Rights Texas mentioned it briefly this morning in his remarks, the idea of a service intensity model versus a location-based model for special education funding. And the other item was, and we had some of this information in the appendix from our previous report around other ways of attracting and retaining special education instructors, both teachers and staff. There's some information in the appendix about other states and what they've been trying for special education teachers specifically, or just for any hard to fill staff positions like STEM teachers and ESL and so forth. So I know that those were two areas that this working group were focused on. I think Adrian might have had another one. Janie, I don't know if you remember or not.
Okay. There were 4 things that we, as a committee member, discussed. One was salaries, and it was appropriate funding to offer salary stipends for full-time special education teachers and paraprofessionals. Maybe make it more generalized. We need more special education teachers hired, and we need to retain the ones we already have. I know that we discussed some sort of loan forgiveness or provide a stipend for teachers to get special education certification. One was the cost of FIEs, provide a cost offset for for FIEs. And if subcontracted, make sure that these people are qualified. The third one was funding formulas. The state currently funds special education based on instructional arrangements or settings. These formulas are based on how much time a student spends in a special education setting. And we need to address the education model versus the service intensity model for finance. And the fourth one that we discussed was medical billing transparency. More ways to track how schools are billing Medicaid for medical things in schools, and request more transparency and information given to parents, especially if how things are being billed. Thank you.
Okay, so justice, some things that we're talking about. We've been talking about restraint issues. We've been talking about justice involvement in schools, like the school to prison pipeline. We've been talking about disparities in discipline in schools. And we've also been talking about disciplinary alternative education placements and how to reintegrate students when they're after there's been a placement.
Amy, this is Agatha. What was the second thing you mentioned? You mentioned restraint and then justice, and I missed it.
Adjustment involvement in schools and the school to prison pipeline.
Can you expand on that?
So the school to prison pipeline is something that happens when, instead of using other pieces of our school system for discipline. Schools are getting police involved in discipline in schools, and then students end up with an arrest record, so they may end up in prison for what started as a school discipline issue.
Hmm.
Or in a lot of cases, and I actually know some people personally, the school issue was not actually a discipline issue, but it was lack of identification in with of some mental health issues that resulted in acting out in a classroom that ended up with this person in prison. So we're talking about like those types of issues in our subcommittee.
Okay.
Does that help define what our subcommittee is doing?
Yeah, I had just not heard that school to prison pipeline statement, and I was just kind of I was wondering what that was. And so like kids are getting in trouble at school and then
Yeah.
ending up
Right, because
going,
and then it becomes a justice issue rather than a school district.
okay, I see.
For health and safety, we are looking at the individualized safety plans for students. We are talking about students being accurately integrated into health and safety plans for whole schools, emergency plans, that may include staff. I would like the whole committee to know that I am currently a part of another committee to implement students being integrated into health and safety plans for all students. So I have also been reporting back to our subcommittee what that committee is doing as well.
And that's just planning like in the event of an event, an emergency happening at the school, that the safety plan include all special needs students, deaf, blind, wheelchairs, all everything.
And that students with disabilities or people with knowledge of students with disabilities are included in the making of the overall plans as well.
Students being involved in it, or
or staff that works with those students, so that it's not like, oh, we forgot.
okay, I see what you're saying. Okay. So real quick, so that would be a policy issue then, and
Right.
but it would
Well, it's implementation of new policy that hasn't been tested yet because these are new legislative laws that just passed.
okay, I see. Okay.
So we need to set a next meeting date for the committee. So 3 months for our quarterly meeting would be in the end of May. So
I will say, Amy, May has typically been a very difficult month to get a meeting in because of all of the end of the school year stuff, especially for administrators and then even for parents. And I think that we've typically ended up shifting our meeting to June. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what we need to do. We can definitely take a vote on it, but just previously, May's always been a month where people have had a tough time.
Exactly. So if we want to move for June, I recommend starting to look early June rather than later June. Um, so let me pull up a calendar so we can all be looking at the same thing. What day of the week do we want to look for in? Does anybody have better days of the week for them?
Mondays and Fridays are best for me. Just pop in.
Maybe I would never, I would say, days, but in this June, I'm going on vacation, so can we do it the 3rd on a Monday?
Monday the 3rd, this is Agatha. Monday the 3rd would work for me as well, because the rest of that week I'm actually out of town myself.
Yeah, 'cause
Or
I'm-
anytime after that first week.
So we're looking at Monday the 3rd, correct?
Yes,
I could do Monday the 3rd. Um, is there anybody that can't do Monday the 3rd?
I will try. Historically, Mondays are bad for me because people get sick over the weekend, so they all want to be seen. So that's my heaviest patient load day, but I'll see what I can do. If I block my schedule now, maybe other people can do it for me.
What about Friday the 7th?
I'm going on holiday.
Oh,
Yeah, for me, that first week, I can do Monday the 3rd. But I also like, I mean, the rest of June is open.
what about Friday?
I'm gonna be gone for holiday, so the 3rd would be like the only one I'll be available.
So Monday the 3rd is our best bet if we need Janie, correct? Lori, you said that you could possibly do the 3rd if you blocked it off early enough. Do you think that's a reasonable thing to do?
Yeah, I can check with the other providers and see if someone could cover for me that day or something.
Okay. Uh, Stephanie, can you look at the 3rd? And see if there are openings?
I don't have access to that, but I did send an email to Region 13 to ask them and if the 3rd is available. So when I get a response, I can let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
While we're waiting for that, does anyone have any agenda items that we need to add to our next agenda? Claudia, I know that you might have found some things as we took our minutes that we said we needed information on, so that would be helpful.
Amy, this is Agatha. I'd suggest that at maybe this next meeting in June or the one after that, we do a bigger focus on our report, because I think we've had a lot of really productive discussion today. And, we can even, if for our next meeting, we can have some things in writing and start putting some things in
Yes.
place, we could do a meeting focusing mostly on our report, and
I
just
that,
light on the updates.
but is there anything as far as questions we need answers to regarding things that we need to put in the report? I guess is my question.
The topics that really stood out were the digital piece that was discussed at the beginning at the meeting, digital accessibility. Also the staffing, and let me see. Those are the two that I can quickly think about that we had questions about, was when Kristen was speaking.
I can add that, like, Kristen invited people to reach out to her directly if they have questions. So, I mean, I know that you want to focus on getting your committee work done, and looking at, do we need presentations to the whole group, or can people reach out to folks at TEA to have them go to their subcommittee meetings? And would that be more productive and a better use of your time?
I agree with you, Stephanie. I think inviting them to our subcommittee groups would be more productive.
Yeah. So I definitely think we need some sort of information on we need more funding information, but I think, and maybe staffing information, but I think the rest of the time we can really devote to talking about our recommendations. Does anybody else think of anything that we need to discuss that isn't directly related to us taking the time to talk about things?
Are
So,
you are you
Amy,
saying that you want presentations on staffing and funding?
Or just somebody to be able to answer questions on staffing and funding. Or we just need somebody here as a resource if when we're talking about our recommendations, we can ask questions.
I don't know that
Yeah.
I know historically when folks from TEA come, if you submit your questions ahead of time, they're happy to come and answer them. But to come and just have that back and forth conversation, that sounds to me like that's more of a subcommittee kind of
Yeah.
presentation.
So maybe what we need to do is as we're working in our subcommittees before June, we need to come up with questions that we're running into issues when we're forming the recommendations, so they can come and answer our questions that came up in the subcommittees.
But would you want them to come and answer for the whole group or just for the subcommittees?
I think it depends on the question. But yes, that could work too if they're willing to come to our subcommittee meetings. that's a question that we need to ask of them, I think.
Okay. So I would suggest if you have, when you're meeting in your subcommittees, if you come up with questions, you can submit those to me. And then I can look for who the best person to be to respond to those, if you don't already know. Some of you already have connections at TEA and you know who to reach out to. But as far as agenda items, we can just
say that we're going to work mostly on the report.
yeah, we could put TEA updates on there and then there may be none.
Right. Or they may have updates that to give us that we don't know about.
Yeah, there may be, like, Kristen is always the one that would have the most recent information available. So we could do general updates and she can do that.
This is Joanne. If I could add, I know, Stephanie, you've been kind of bringing us up to date on the 18+ transition program, but I would, since we are going to meet in June, it'll be after the school year. This is the last year for my son to participate in an 18+ program, so I would like to pass on the baton to someone within our district to share with our local districts continuing advisory special education committee as to, you know, TEA's overlook and what the program expectations of what a program should look like. So I do, if the timing's right and we're ready to, you know, for TEA to present, I would like that on the June agenda.
Okay, thank you. I have that on there.
Does anyone have any other questions before we continue? Do you think 9 to 2 will be enough time? Or do we need to adjust the schedule for the 3rd?
I think if we stay on task, I think 9 to 2 is plenty of time, but I think we need to actually do as much actual work as possible.
I agree.
I mean, I'm not saying I don't think that TEA updates are important, but I do think that, you know, if you want, as chair, you've said that you would like our report to be finished by August. And so if that's the case, then we need to be able to like get together and just work on the report and get things going and, you know.
I think that should be enough time. If we don't have a lot of reports from PEA. Not that they're not good, not that we don't need them, but we also need our time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think 9 to 2 should work fairly well. And I think it would be helpful if we were able to schedule as many of the work group meetings as we can before then. I would say if you haven't had a subcommittee meeting by April, start trying to have one. Yeah. So we will work on that. And I will send y'all my slides with what we talked about in terms of who's doing what and who you should go to if you have questions with scheduling or questions about what your work group is doing. I can send that out so that everybody knows who to ask for what.
And Amy, if you don't mind just clarifying for our next meeting in June, what are you wanting subcommittees to have written down to present, like some sort of a
Well,
rough draft background written down and just a rough draft of ideas for recommendations?
a rough draft of background, and if that leads to any recommendations, good, but at least the rough draft of the background so
Just a
that
problem statement.
we as a subcommittee can suggest recommendations that come to us after reading the problem statement or the background.
I think that would be reasonable to just at least get a problem statement written down so that way we can, narrow down what the issue is, and then even as a committee come up with some recommendations and get those written.
As you write the background problem statement, if it becomes obvious in writing the problem statement what the recommendation is, go ahead and write it, and we can help you flesh it out, but so yes, that is your assignment before June.
Amy, I have 2 updates. Can I give those to you?
Sure.
Okay. The person at Region 13 who schedules the rooms is out of the office today, and she responded she will not be able to give me an answer till Monday. So I can't give you an answer definitively if June 3rd is going to work.
Okay. Can we follow up via email if June 3rd isn't going to work?
Sure, absolutely. I'll let you know. I'll let you know on Monday. And then I got some clarification from the legal department about the question that the committee members had regarding public comments. And the response that I got from the legal department is CAC members may ask follow-up questions of the person who is giving a public comment, but as a reminder, the person giving the public comment has 3 minutes, and then only 30 minutes of the meeting are set aside for public comments. So you have to also consider if you've got 5 people giving public comments and you spend a lot of time asking the first person questions, then you may not get to everybody. So there's the clarification. And that's it. I know we need to approve some minutes, beginning with the June 5th meeting from 2023.
Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes?
I think those were only sent to you and I, Amy.
Okay. Stephanie, do you want to share your screen?
Or Claudia, do you have them pulled out by chance?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I knew you would. Thank you.
Okay, I have the attendance, but the highlighted ones are names that I did not know whether they were present or not. Or whether they were absent or not.
I could tell you Let's see. Laura was absent. And Shamika were absent, so that's correct. And everybody else was present.
Claudia, I'm good if you want to scroll down.
One question I did have, these links are saved in my Google folder. I didn't know if there was a different link to the presentations that you wanted to share, or do I not share the presentations that were shared with us?
Agatha, what did you usually do?
If I had a link to it, I would just put it in, or a link to a website they suggested. I didn't jump through hoops in order to find the presentations, but if they offered them, I would include the link. But sometimes the links didn't work, but I think what you have is great. Looks good, Claudia.
Can I get a motion to approve the June 5th, 2023 minutes?
Just real quick, Amy, I would just, the only thing is in the motion to adjourn, Joan, I would just put in her last name, who seconded the motion. That's
Was
it.
that me? And it's Joanne, not Joan.
Oh, Joanne, yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I was like, who's Joan? Joanne, yeah.
Capital ANN. Up at the by 9:45, is that correct year, September 11th, 2022?
Oh, it would
It's-
be 2023, wouldn't it?
And it's two ends, not three, sorry, on Joanne.
Okay, thank you. I believe it was 22
Okay,
Was.
because this meeting is from June 5th, 23.
Right, it was 22 because it was the one that was missing when
okay,
our previous.
Oh, oh, okay. That's the one I had to go back and do.
Yes.
okay.
Is that right?
Oh, I see. This is is this
Yeah.
the meeting date? Sorry. Yes. It
Yeah,
should
that
be
would be 23. That would be, but I had to review the minutes from the last one. Okay. So, Amy, I'll motion to approve the minutes. Agatha Thibodeau.
I will second. Under the absentees, I know Adrian is missing.
Day, yeah, I could tell you who's absent today. Adrian, his last name is Guerra. And then Tara is absent, Tara. I'll spell her last name, Cebалlos. And then Cheryl is absent. It's with an S, Sheryl. And her last name is Kubala. And then for attendance, some of the people that you have up there are not actually committee members. They're members of the public. So for example, Lisa, I would take Lisa off. I would take Brittany off. She's a TA. She's our legal counsel. Cindy Moses, I would take off. And Sabrina, I would take off. And then Lori is, she attended. Of course you did, but it's Lori Brown. There you go.
I'm good for scrolling if anyone else is ready. Stephanie, can you remind us what Kim's title is?
Absolutely. It's Director of Special Education, Technical Assistance.
This looks good so far. Oh, Andrea's name is misspelled. Do we need to put in the minutes that we took a break from 11 to 11:10?
If you want, I don't think I have in the past. It just kind of picked up where we left off time wise.
Okay. That's
It's
fine.
up to you though, if you want it in there. I haven't in the past.
I don't think we need to. This is
I
one.
mean, when we broke for lunch, it would be in the agenda when we were meeting in person, but a 10-minute break, it's kind of like, just let everybody go to the bathroom.
I don't think we need to keep legal response to our question regarding public comments in future meeting topics because we already answered that. But other than that, it looks okay to me. Are we going to approve the December 4th meeting minutes?
Agatha, didn't you do those? Yeah, you're on mute, but I kind of read your lips.
Sorry. I have them and I can share my screen and we can approve those and then that way
Yeah.
we can finish that up. Okay. So this is the meeting minutes from December 4th. And it was a lot of TEA updates. Stephanie, if you don't mind just making sure I got all of the attendees. I believe that I did, but
I think so. To
okay.
pull up my old agenda.
Let's scroll.
You did.
Okay, thank you.
Looks good so far.
Okay.
Oh, Terry Harrison, sorry, he should be listed up at the top.
Terry,
Terry, Terry Harrison.
under absent,
No, under Texas Education Agency, he was a
okay.
presenter. It's Terry Harrison. There you go. Perfect. Yeah, I forgot he gave a travel update.
Okay. Oh, there he is. Yep,
Yeah.
I didn't add him. Okay, thank you for catching that. I'm gonna scroll some more.
Kara's name is misspelled at the bottom.
Yeah. It's
What,
OS. Just take out the A. There's no A in there.
Oh,
Perfect.
thank you.
I move to approve.
I'll second. Agatha.
All in
All right.
favor? Any opposed?
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and then Stephanie, I'll send these to you right away.
Thank you.
So,
Oh, and real quick to Janie, I had put it in the messages, but to Janie, I will send you the format of the meeting minute template that Shamika Allen, who was on our committee before, had gotten and it's similar to the two you've seen. So
Thank you so much, Agatha.
you're welcome.
and then now I need a motion to approve the minutes for today. Anyone like to make a motion?
Janie, motion to approve.
Aaron, second. All in favor? Any opposed? So minutes are approved.
Can I just ask, I have one ask. Claudia, could you please send me the June 5th meeting minute since we had a couple of changes and then today's? If you can send that to me, thank you. And then what I will do is send it out to all the committee members. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
A motion that we adjourn, Janie.
Agatha, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. With that, I will close our February 23rd meeting of the Continuing Advisory Committee for Special Education. Thank you all for all of your hard and dedicated work today.